This pie chart represents the federal discretionary budget. That's the amount of money that Congress has available to allocate after mandatory expenses like interest on the national debt and Social Security have been paid for. As you can see, things like education, health care, energy independence, they get the little slices on the bottom. And what's known as the peacetime Pentagon budget gets the entire top half. And that doesn't include additional money for the war in Iraq and Afghanistan. Polling has shown that once Americans find out about this, over 2/3 of them want to take some money out of the Pentagon and use it here in our local communities for our children, energy independence, and paying down the national debt. Well, as we all know, it's a dangerous world out there. So we asked a board of military experts if shifting some money out of the Pentagon would put us at risk. They told us that the Pentagon is continuing to this day to build extraordinarily expensive weapon systems that were designed during the Cold War to fight the former Soviet Union and are of no benefit in protecting us from today's terrorist threats. Dr. Lawrence Korb is the former Assistant Secretary of Defense under Ronald Reagan. He produced a report that identifies each one of those weapon systems, how much they cost, and why they're no longer needed. It adds up to $60 billion a year that is being spent on weapons. That's a great deal for weapons manufacturers, lobbyists, and politicians who benefit from their contributions and jobs. But it's a bad deal for the rest of us. In fact, spending on these weapon systems ends up taking money from the armor that our troops really need and actually makes us less secure.
Every 4 years, the presidential candidates come through our state and we listen to them talk. And it's usually just that, a whole lot of talk. This time, the Priorities campaign is giving New Hampshire citizens the tools to take advantage of the unique power our first-in-the-nation presidential primary gives us. We're challenging the candidates to get down to specifics and put their money where their mouths are. And when the presidential candidates all go away in January, we'll still be here building support for sensible budget priorities.
We're back here at St. Anselm College in Manchester, New Hampshire. We're now set for our voters to question the candidates. Our pool of voters here are either registered Democrats or independents likely to vote Democratic in the New Hampshire First-in-the-Nation primary. We brought them together with help from the New Hampshire Political Library and the New Hampshire Institute of Politics. CNN producers have interviewed all of them. And working with me in this half of the debate is Jennifer Vaughn from our partner, WMUR-TV. Jennifer has the first question. Jennifer?
Well, thank you. Good evening, everybody. Our first question from the audience tonight is from Jenny LeBranch. She's an elementary school teacher from Manchester, New Hampshire. Jenny, you are also the wife of a soldier who is serving in Iraq. That's correct. And I understand that you have had a very difficult week, haven't you?
Yes, unfortunately, we lost 2 soldiers and my husband's team to an IED explosion.
What's on tap next?
Well, we got to finish the mission, and we're all Army strong, and we want to bring all our guys and gals home and continue with, just, I guess, every day.
Jenny, what's your question for the candidates tonight?
My question is, what is your vision on ending major military operations, and how do you plan on rebuilding the military after such many years of conflict?
All right, let me throw that question to Congressman Kuccinich, because he's been outspoken on a lot of these issues.
Thank you very much, Wolf. First of all, thank you and your family for serving. This country has to end its occupation of Iraq. And as I mentioned earlier, the Congress, the Democratic Congress, has a very serious responsibility in this regard. We should simply not provide any bill at all. It's one thing to say you don't have the votes. It's another thing not to even offer a bill and tell the President he has the money now that's in the pipeline to bring the troops home. Now, with respect to this war has degraded our service ability. And we need to have certainly a strong Army, but I believe that peace is the way we reflect our strength. So I want to see an American military that will be a strong peacekeeping force, not one that is being misused, like the one in this administration misuses our military. And we need a commander-in-chief who wants to link peace with security and who wants to see America's role working with the world community in cooperation.
Her question was specifically, what would you do to rebuild the military, which seems to be pretty stretched right now? Do you have a plan?
Well, the first thing we need to do is cut, first of all, there's a couple different dimensions. One is we need to cut military spending overall by about 25%. There's a lot of waste here we're talking about. Money hasn't been focused on the troops per se. This $97 billion for this war isn't going to the troops. A small fraction goes to the troops. So we need to have a strong military. We need to encourage people to be serving in our country's military. But we've got to end the United States' commitment to war as an instrument of diplomacy.
All right, I'm going to bring everybody in. But Senator Obama, you want to increase the size of the U.S. military by almost 100,000 troops. That's going to cost billions and billions of dollars. What do you say to Congressman Kuccinich, who says he wants to cut the size of the U.S. military?
Well, keep in mind that there's a difference between the Pentagon budget and the size of the military. So it may be that, for example, there are weapon systems that Dennis and I would agree are outmoded relics of the Cold War. But what I want to make certain of is that our troops are not going on these repeated tours, lengthy tours, that we are providing them with all the support they need when they're on the ground, and we can't do that currently. We also need, and I want to make sure that this is emphasized, that when they come home, we are treating them with the dignity and honor that they deserve. And that's something, whether you were for the war or against the war, we can all agree to. And this administration has not done that because they tried to do it on the cheap. Folks who have post-traumatic stress disorder, folks who have disability payments that are due, are not getting the kinds of services they deserve. I have some specific plans to address that.
Senator Dodd, are there relics of the Cold War, big-ticket military items that you would cut?
Well, first of all, thank you for your service as well. And by the way, whatever other disagreements there are about policy, all of us here on this dais applaud immensely the work being done by our men and women in uniform. I think a round of applause for what you're doing here. We appreciate it immensely. Thank you. And that's the right issue, I think. We're not listening to our senior military people, by the way, who tried to engage in the transformation of our military needs here, recognizing that there's different threats we face today than we did during the Cold War. And clearly, there needs to be a reassessment of what those priorities are, what those systems are, so that we're strong enough. We all need to say this, by the way. I think it's very, very important. No one's going to be elected president, or ought to be president, that's not going to have as their primary priority keeping us safe and secure. That is the principal responsibility of an American president. But to do that, you've also got to make sure that we're going to be prepared to use that force, not as the first arrow we draw out of the quiver, but rather utilizing the other resources we have as a nation to advance our interests. That has not happened here under this administration. We need to get back to that as a nation.
But is there a specific military program?
Absolutely. Clearly, we've got systems here, the F-22 we're looking at, for instance, other things that ought to be reassessed in terms of whether or not they fit into a 21st century military needs of our nation.
Thank you, Senator. Jennifer, back to you.